Albert Breer. What can you tell me about this travesty? Albert, you there?
Yeah, what's up?
How are you doing? So you're there. You're there in Redskins Park, are you?
I am. I heard you guys talking about Coach. I was half paying attention.
No worries.
And I've half been paying attention to the return of that show. I'm kind of excited about it. It used to be on when I was a kid. It was on in the middle of the day on in syndication.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it was constantly playing. Like, you get home from school and it would be on.
That's right. Everyone became Minnesota State fans.
Followed by step by step, right?
So, Albert, speaking of step by step, take me step by step through what you believe the future of RG3 is going to be in that spot from which you're calling right now.
I just think that it's difficult for them to keep him on the roster, particularly because they're trying to create the best environment for Kirk Cousins to succeed in 2015. So, my guess is that when he clears the concussion protocol, they'll put him on the block. They'll try to trade him. That $16 million option, I think, makes him almost untradeable.
Yeah.
And it also creates a likelihood that he would actually clear waivers if they cut him. And so my guess is one way or the other, he'll be off the team. And I think that the most likely scenario is that they wind up failing to trade him and have to cut him.
And if he's cut, how long does he stay on the street, figuratively, Albert?
It's difficult because, I've checked a couple teams that I thought would make sense. The Jets aren't interested. I don't think the Cardinals are interested. That would be one place that would make sense because, how great Bruce Arians has been at developing quarterbacks. Green Bay is somebody who has stockpiled quarterbacks in the past and a team that could make sense. I think what most people agree on here is that he needs to go somewhere and sit and learn. And one thing I know Mike Shanahan was pretty consistent with Dan Snyder about while he was coaching Griffin here is he really felt like it was going to be a 4 or 5 year process, turning Robert Griffin into a prototypical drop back professional quarterback. But he just had so little background in that and so far to go that it was going to take that type of commitment. And that's why I think the best thing for Griffin now might be to, if he does have the opportunity to pick his own spot and he does clear waivers, if he is cut, then the best thing to do would be to find a place that's very strong when it comes to coaching quarterbacks and a place where he won't have to play right away.
So you don't think there's a shot? Charles Robinson of Yahoo was on before, and he mentioned some landing spaces that might make sense eventually for a long term, I guess, and Kansas City being one of them because he thought Andy Reid could do something for him. But he posited that the Redskins are going to keep RG3 around just in case Cousins and Colt McCoy aren't answers, and that that may be a possibility. Do you think that's feasible, Albert?
I think the ship sailed. I mean, I just think the ship sailed on as far as him being the franchise quarterback here. And the issue is if you keep him around, then you've got that $16 million option hanging over your head. And so if he gets hurt in practice, you could wind up being responsible for that, and that'd be 10% of your salary cap in 2016. So I know it's only an injury guarantee, and I know that, if he comes out of the season healthy, you can still cut him after the year. I just think it's an unnecessary risk, and I think it's over. I mean, Rich, I think it's what's best for everybody. It's one of those situations where I don't think it's a good thing for Kirk Cousins to have that, have somebody with that kind of history sitting behind him. I don't think it's good for the team to have that potential storyline coming up if Kirk has a bad game or two. And I don't think it's good for Griffin to be here either. So I think if you add it all up, I think the best scenario for everyone, whether it's by trade or whether it's by his release, is for Robert Griffin III to be playing somewhere else. And I would agree with Charles on Kansas City. I mean, I'd put that in the same category as Arizona, a place with strong quarterback coaching where he can go and sit for a little while and develop a little bit because he hasn't been given the chance to do that over the course of the first 3 years of his career. It's all been about pushing him out there onto the field. And, I think that he would get something out of sitting and learning something.
Now, in terms of ships sailing, Albert, this seems to me that finally coming to grips that this ship has sailed is a little bit late, okay? Certainly when you take a look at last year in 2014, where Griffin got his gig back after Colt McCoy beats the Cowboys, they decided, okay, injury is not going to cause you to lose your job, but ineffectiveness is, where they put McCoy in a Week 13 game at Indianapolis, gave him a couple of starts in which he lost both those games, gave Griffin the gig back again. and he only won once in that spot. He only won one game last year.
Yeah.
Albert, how in the world did the ship not sail then? Why now? Why did it take a disastrous preseason performance that left him concussed for the Redskins to finally say this ship has sailed?
I think the easy answer is the owner. I think he needed to be convinced of it. And, Shanahan told Snyder, like I said, told him a lot of these things. A lot of the stuff that Jay Gruden told him in 2014, and a lot of the stuff that Scott McCloughan's told him in 2015, Mike Shanahan was telling him, in 2012 and 2013. And so I think it's just kind of an accumulation of voices. Finally, you hear it from enough people, and you start to say, okay, I've got to listen now. And I think that's kind of the point it came to. Look, last year, and I think Jay Gruden's approach, and I know Jay Gruden's approach, was to try and make Robert Griffin earn the job. And he came in and he said, okay, you got to earn your spot here just like anybody else. And he wound up losing the right to be the quarterback in the middle of the year, went back and forth, and obviously things got ugly there in November and December, and that didn't really work. So Scott McCloughan comes in, and I think it was a borderline mandate there that, let's just give Griffin one more chance. The owner wanted to see him one more time, and so they took a different approach. They empowered him. They named him the starting quarterback at the Combine all the way back in February when they didn't need to do that. Through the spring and into the summer, they gave him every single first-team rep. And it was just overwhelmingly obvious, and it wasn't close, that the best quarterback here was Kirk Cousins. It wasn't Robert Griffin III. And eventually you got to be honest with yourself about those things. And so, my sense is what they were telling the owner more recently was the same things that Jay Gruden was telling the owner last year and the same things that Mike Shanahan was telling the owner in 2012 and 2013. This is about not getting better. Griffin hasn't gotten better over the last 3.5 years, and that's where the real problem lies.
Couple more minutes with you, Albert. Let's talk Buffalo. Why did Rex Ryan choose Tyrod Taylor, from what you're hearing?
I think he's wanted to choose Tyrod Taylor since the spring. It's just a matter of having the stomach to do it. If he had a young team, I know that sounds funny, right? If he had a young team, and this is a rebuilding situation, I think Tyrod Taylor would have been named the starting quarterback on Memorial Day. He liked him when he was with the Jets. They discussed trading for him there. I think the thing that kind of held Rex back here to some degree is he has a team that's so ready to win now. When the defense is potentially dominant, they've got a great group, a great group of skill players. Their offensive line should be better. So there are so many things there that are working at such a high level, and do you want to roll the dice on a young quarterback? And so I think that was the last piece of it. You get to the summer, and I think, Rex really wanted to go with Tyrod, but the last piece is you got to make sure, is he going to be responsible with the ball? Is he going to play the drop back game? Is he going to do all those things? And Tyrod just methodically checked off every single box, and that's why he's the quarterback.
Why release Fred Jackson? What's that all about, Albert?
I mean, it was weird because I was at the game the other day, and he looked pretty spry breaking off that 41-yard run on his first carry. So I think it's the fit for the offense at this point. Shady McCoy's obviously going to play a big role there. They've got some young guys they want to play. So,
but Fred has no trade value. I mean, just flat out, he's not even one of their best 75.
Well, part of this though, Rich, is doing the right thing by the player too. And I know that they've got great respect. Doug Whaley and Russ Brandon and all those guys, they've got great respect for Fred Jackson and what he's meant to that area. And I think to some degree they did him a solid in letting him pick a spot, let him pick where he wants to go, and cutting him a little bit early.
And
they cut him before they really needed to.
Right.
And so that makes sense. You're trying to do the right thing rather than, peddling him out there and seeing if you can get a 6th or 7th round pick at the end of the week.
Seattle's that spot, you think, Albert?
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
I think so. It makes sense because it's good for the Seahawks because it gives them a depth piece behind Marshawn Lynch.
Damn straight
and
it
it
does.
get you somebody else in the locker room who's got that relationship with Lynch. Lynch doesn't get close to a ton of people, but this is another guy.
From Buffalo.
Mike Robb was like that guy we work with. Another guy in that locker room who he feels like Fred Jackson really has his back. And I think that there's that dynamic that really helped the Seahawks. With Marshawn and obviously I think that you can still see that Fred can bring a little something to the table.
Yeah.
May not be the full-time back anymore, but he won't have to be with Marshawn.
Yeah,
there.
they go back to the Buffalo days together. That's right.
Right.
So,
Right.
last question for you. We're still no white smoke out of the Southern District. When do you think Judge Berman rules here, Albert?
Well, hopefully today. I think the longer it goes, the more you got to kind of raise your eyebrows and wonder if there's some sort of settlement talks. I think Judge Berman had this decision made when he went into the courtroom yesterday. Evidence is that they were in there for 4 minutes, and I think the opinion's written. I think everything's ready to go. And my sense of it, and only he knows for sure, but my sense of it is he gave him basically a 24 to 48 hour extension, said, here's your last chance to settle. If not, I'm going to rule. And so I think that ruling's ready to go. And I think it's a ruling that, in certain ways is going to be painful for both sides, whether that means he's going to throw it back to a neutral arbitrator. And so you got to start the arbitration process all over again in order to get it out of the courts, or does something else. I don't think the outcome is going to be pretty for anyone coming out of this. I think everybody's going to have some blood on their hands. And this period that we're in right now is just a last-ditch attempt to try to get the sides to settle.
So, but if a neutral arbitrator hears it, does that mean Brady gets to play in 9 days?
Yes. If it goes back to the arbitrator, what the judge would do then is he would vacate the penalty, this would be like Peterson. He would vacate the penalty and he would throw it back to the arbitration process. The upshot of that is that now it's out of the courts. If he were to uphold the penalty, say he upholds it at 4 games and makes it painful for the league on the other side by writing something strong against the commissioner's power or whatever, well, then it's going to be appealed to a higher court, so it stays in the court system. I think the benefit for him of vacating and throwing back to arbitration, if he doesn't vacate it altogether, would be that at least then you get it out of the court system so the taxpayers aren't paying for all this silliness.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate the time, Albert, as always. You take care.
Anytime, Rich.
That's Albert Breer, at Albert Breer.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.